So if you want to scale your email marketing revenue to 6 figures and beyond, then this video will show you exactly the system my clients use to scale their email marketing revenue to get results like you can see on screen right now. And if you wait till the end of the video, I'll show you the 3 question tests that you can use to know if the subscribers on your list are actually negatively impacting your revenue. This video will show you exactly what to focus on and the things to ignore if you are trying to scale your email marketing revenue to 6 figures and beyond. So if you're interested in stuff like that, this is the video for you. Now, just to prepare your mind, we're not going to be talking about how to set up your Klaviyo account or subject line tricks in this video. We are going to be talking about big stuff that actually moves the needle for you when it comes to making sales with email marketing. So the things we are going to be talking about, likely you probably haven't heard of them before, so you might need to strap in and let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to be talking about when it comes to scaling your email marketing revenue to 6 figures per month and beyond is something most people never even think about. And it actually has nothing to do with writing the emails, but it makes all the difference in how much sales and revenues come from your email list. So to explain what I mean, I'm going to tell you a story. There's a brand called Cards Against Mundanity. And essentially, they create card games that people play to have fun, all of that kind of stuff. In 2014, they removed all the products from their sites and put up only one product. It was Black Friday, and they did this as a sort of marketing gimmick. And can you guess what that product was? It was cow dung. Literal cow feces, right? They put it up, and that was the only product for sale. And guess how many people bought? The cow dung sold out in 2 hours, and 30,000 people paid for it. 30,000 people brought out their credit cards and purchased a box of cow dung. Why would people do that? That's the question I have. If you are selling a product or service that's actually valuable and you're struggling to make sales, you should be asking yourself the same question. Why would people bring out their wallets, pay for a box of literal cow dung, right? Is it because they had a great offer? Is it because they had quality traffic? Or maybe, is it because they had really good copy, like copy that can persuade you to bring out your wallet and buy cow excreta? Right? The answer, obviously, is none of the above. There was only one reason why people brought out their hard-earned money to pay for something like that. And that is because they had a strong relationship with the brand. Right? People that knew about the brand, that loved the brand, had a strong relationship with them, enough to say, I want to purchase this, to just see what happens. Is it a gimmick? Is it not a gimmick? What would I get? Would I actually get cow dung? Would I get something different? Are they trying to surprise us? They had that strong relationship with 30,000 people that purchased it and sold out the cow dung. And that brings us to the very first point of making sales. Now, when I'm talking about sales, I'm talking about 6 figures per month and beyond with your email lists that most people never talk about. And that is the goal of your email lists. How do you think about your email lists, right? What do you think the purpose of your email list is, your mindset? Do you think it is to pitch, to sell, to promote? If you say any of those, then you would be wrong. Your email list has one job and one job only, and that is to build a strong relationship with the right kind of audience for your product or service. That's the only thing you are trying to do. And if you get this right, every other thing begins to make sense. The biggest problem I see people make is that they have the wrong mindset. They are not thinking about it properly. And then every other thing, their actual writing of emails, the promotion they make, how they package their offer, every other thing falls because they don't have this in mind. So that's the very first thing I need you to understand, that your email has only one, your email lists and your email marketing has only one purpose: to build a strong relationship with the right type of prospects for your business. I like to put it this way. I like to say your email list is your wife. Meaning, the same way you would try to build a strong relationship with your husband or your wife or a partner in real life is the exact same way you want to approach building a relationship with your list. Because if you can do that, you would make sales. Like, if you can build a strong enough relationship, sales will come as a result, as a secondary effect. So always remember, never forget, your email list is your wife. That's the first thing you need to know if you want to scale to 7 figures and beyond. Now, the second thing is, again, something most people never think about, but is the foundation of strong sales and revenue when it comes to email. And that's what I call list architecture. So let me explain what I mean to you. Let's imagine this is Dave. This is Dave from accounting. And Dave is a cool guy. I mean, he doesn't cause any trouble. He's just chill, does his work. However, his mother, okay, let's say this is his mother's skirt. His mother wants Dave to get married. So his mother is asking, where's my bride? Where's the ring? This is a ring, in case you can't see it. So his mother is asking, I want you to get married. So Dave sets out and creates a goal. I want to get married in 3 years and start a family. So that's his goal. Now, would it be very wise for Dave to just sit down and expect a wife to materialize in his hands? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? So ideally, Dave should be putting in the work to get to a point where he can build a strong family and relationship. And what would that work likely look like? What kind of work would he be putting in? So probably he'll be developing himself financially, right? Mentally, physically. So physically, these muscles. Physically, spiritually, right? However, he needs to be developing himself. Second thing is, he needs to build the right circle. He needs to probably get into the circle of people who are like-minded, that some of them may eventually become his wife. And then lastly, he needs to actually go out there, get on dates, talk to people, all of that, do the work, before he would be able to get married in 3 years. Now, I say all of this to get to one point. Before you can achieve your results, there are some foundational works. There are some foundational elements that you need to get done before you can achieve any kind of results. And it's the same thing with growing your email list. Before you can get to the point of saying you want to scale your email list to 6 figures per month, 7 figures in a year, there needs to be the right foundation. And that is what the list architecture is. There are two things under the list architecture. The first thing is the quality, the list quality. Now, obviously, if you want to make sales and you want to grow your business, you need to have the right kind of people on your list. Everybody knows that. Everybody understands that. But very, very few people know exactly what it even means to have the right kind of people. So when it comes to email lists, I have the three question test I use to know if you have the right kind of people. Because if you don't, it is going to negatively impact your revenue, right? And this is what I call the 3 question test. So if you want to know if you have the list quality, you need to ask yourself, motivation, is my list motivated? You need to ask yourself, means, does my list have the means? And you need to ask yourself, mental models. Does my list have the right mental model needed to succeed? So let's go. Motivation. Motivation means, do the people on your list have the pain or problem, or do they have the desire sufficiently enough to solve the problem? It's a different thing if I sort of want to solve the problem versus I am in pain right now and I need a solution. That's your motivation. If you don't have the motivation, if the people on your list don't have the motivation, there's nothing you can do. No matter how good your system or structure is, you would struggle to sell because they don't want it, they don't care. Second, the means. Do they have the means to work with you? Meaning, If you sell a service, can they afford the service? If you do something like, say, you tune up racing cars, do they actually have racing cars? Do they have the means for your product or service to work? Right? The last one is something people never talk about, but can make all the difference when it comes to selling. The thing about selling is you always have to deal with human beings, and all of us have different frames of mind. However, there are frames of mind that are counterproductive to achieving the results you want people to achieve. For instance, let's say you're a confidence coach. There are two mental models people can take. Somebody can believe that confidence is innate and there's nothing you can do to bring confidence if you don't have it natural to you. But another person can believe confidence can be learned. So if you have a list full of people with the mental model that confidence is innate and there's nothing they can do to actually learn how to be confident, if you're a confidence coach selling an offer related to building your confidence, you would struggle to sell, even if they have the motivation and the means. Because they have the wrong mental model, you will struggle to sell. So what you need is people who have the right mental model, right? So ask yourself, do these people have the right beliefs, the right mindsets, the right values to work with me and be successful? Now, it may not matter as much if you're selling a product, but still, mental model comes into play, right? You don't want people who buy your product and refund without using it, or who are in a wrong state and the product doesn't work for them and they give you bad reviews. You want the right mental model. That is list quality. The second part of the list architecture is what I call list quantity. Now you have the quality, we need to ramp up the quantity. Now the beautiful thing about quantity is that the number of people on your list is a multiplier, meaning it takes the same number or it takes the same amount of effort to sell to one person as it does to sell to 1 million people. Meaning, if you write an email and you send it to one person, it's the same effort it takes to send to 1 million people. So you've literally won 1 million your ROI just by having more people on the list. So it makes sense to grow your list as large as possible, provided you are maintaining the list quality. That's why two of them work hand in hand. Provided you are maintaining the list quality, it makes sense to grow your lists to as large as possible. The question now is, how do you grow your lists? And how do you have list quantity, right, with the right quality? There are so many things you can say about this. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, but I'll give you a framework that I use. All right, so this is the strategy I use to grow list quantity while maintaining list quality. And it's very simple. I call it list confluence. In real life, confluence is where rivers merge into one larger stream. And it's the same thing for your email list, meaning you want to have every single traffic source pointing back to your email list in a very clear and direct manner, right? Meaning your ads should lead to your email lists. Your LinkedIn, your email list. YouTube, email. Websites, email. Everything leads to your email list. And the reason this is important is if email is really the biggest ROI you can get on any marketing channel, there's something like 40x ROI on email, then why won't you lead all your traffic here? The problem now is most people lead a few, probably lead YouTube, LinkedIn, and then Instagram, but then leave the rest. And it makes no sense. You are losing out on a ton of people. So I'm just going to point out a few things that you should be doing if you are currently not doing it. So let's go to your website homepage. On your website, you need to be actively asking people to join your list. And I don't mean having that little subscribe button at the bottom of your footer somewhere. I mean having a whole section, right, where you see there's something to get and you need to put in your name, your email to accept it. Whether it's a book, whether it's a checklist, it needs to be on your homepage because that's the most popular page. Another thing you should be doing is using website pop-ups. When people want to leave your site, let there be a pop-up. They can get a mystery discount. They can spin a wheel to get a gift. There are a lot of things you could do to get them to join your list. Another thing people don't do enough is in your products. Ask people to join your list. Now, let's say you, for instance, you sell a physical product. Let's say you sell a physical book. You can have a free chapter and say they need to join your list to get that chapter, right? Let's assume what you sell is not even a book. Let's say it's a shoe or something. You can have a physical letter, like a flyer, that goes along with the product that tells them, join my list and get X discount against your next purchase, or get a free gift with your next purchase. You have to be creative with the offer, but with your products, you've already done all the work to sell the products, right? Add it. Add a means to promote your email list. The reason is because people who buy products many times borrow other people or their friends to see it. So even if they're on your list, you can have that multiplier effect by simply having a way to promote them to be on your list, right? So those are the three most important things that I believe most people are not doing. If you have a digital product, let's say it's an ebook, on the first page of the ebook, give them a reason to join your list. If it's a course, the first video, give them a reason to join your list. All of this leads to having the list quantity we are looking for to build up our list architecture. Now, the list architecture is the preparation you need to start making sales. So if you get this right, then everything becomes easy because you have the right quality of people and you also have the right quantity of the people. Now, this gets us to the third thing in the system for scaling your email marketing to 7 figures and beyond. And this probably goes against everything you've been taught up until this point about email marketing. But I just have to tell you, you need to stop giving value. I know. Every guru says you have to give value. And it may work on other platforms. I don't know. But I'm an expert on email. And with email, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And now let me define what I mean. If your goal with email is to make sales, right? Then this is not for you. If your goal is to do any other thing, then you can do whatever you want. But if your goal is to make sales, then stop giving value. Secondly, what is value exactly? Value, in this context, means giving away your best stuff so that people will look at it and say, if that's what is in his free products, how much more would his paid products be? How much better would it be? And that doesn't even make sense. If you're giving your best stuff away, then there's not going to be more in your paid product, but that's by the way. Let me explain to you why this doesn't make sense. Let's assume you own a burger shop in Atlanta and you are setting out to be the best burger shop, right? So, according to the principle of giving value, you need to give away your best stuff, meaning you need to serve your burgers for free. So you open up shop and say, everybody come and get free burgers, right? In hopes that people will one day come back and buy your burgers. Like, it doesn't make sense. You can see how illogical that sounds. If you are giving it away for free, why would people buy it? Do you understand? What you can do if you are doing something like this is give a portion for free, meaning a taste test or one day for free. But you can't continually give it free and expect people to buy. So if it does not work in this context, why do we think it will work in a service-based business or an information-based business? And I believe it's even worse for people who are in the service industry or who sell info products, because you are literally giving away what should be sold, what your product is. That's what you are giving away for free, right? So instead of giving value, I prefer to use the term be valuable. And they are very, very different, right? Being valuable is different from giving value, because being valuable doesn't mean you should teach. It just means you should be valuable. And what does that mean? It means you need to show up in a way where people trust you as the expert, whether by implication, right, or by reality, that you are the best person to do the job, whether that is to teach something or to sell them a product. You need to show up in a way that builds trust and shows that you are the expert on that particular subject. That is what being valuable means. And it doesn't mean you should give value. So let me give another example for it to make sense. Let's assume you have an auto repair shop and you're trying to build your business, right? Your customers don't need to know 3 ways to change an alternator, right? That is giving value. And they don't need that. What they need is for you to show up in a way where they trust that if they bring their car to your shop, they'll get the best job done. They'll get it done fast. You save them money, right? And you will help them do it in such a way that you're going to prevent future repairs. So that is how you need to show up, right? And giving value doesn't do that. Again, I know this goes against what you've probably heard, but it's very, very important. If you want to make sales, giving value gets in the way of sales, right? With email. But being valuable is a totally different thing. And it helps you being valuable, and it helps you actually make sales. Now, later in this video, I will show you exactly how I write valuable emails, not value emails, but valuable emails that help you to sell, right, while still being valuable to your customers. However, if you want to learn more about my system for scaling your email marketing revenue to 6 figures and beyond, click the second link in the description. And I've created a document that outlines a lot of what we've spoken about here, but in more detail for you to learn at your own time. So you can click that link in the description. Now that we understand that you should not give value, but instead be valuable, we need to move on to the next thing that builds any type of relationship. Remember, we've established that what? Your email list is your wife. Now, the next thing that builds any type of relationship, right? And this is the reason why we go on dates in real life. We want to try and understand the person. We want to try and understand our potential partner or a potential husband or a potential wife, right? And that is why we go on dates. So this understanding is key in growing any business. And that's why you must have heard that you need to understand your audience or understand your lists or some variation of that. The problem, however, is how do we actually understand our audience? How do we understand our list? Now, we do that through research. But there are 2 types of research. There is what I call overt research, and this is what I call covert research. So overt research is what you've probably heard of the most. You can do things like sending a form to your lists to understand what they want, what they hate, what they would like to see, stuff like that. You've probably heard researching forums to understand what people are asking about, their pains, their fears, their frustrations, all of that. You might have heard things like checking your competitor reviews to see what people are complaining about, stuff like that. All of that falls under overt research. That means things you do outwardly to understand your audience. However, there is an even stronger way to understand your audience, and that's what I call covert research. So let's say, for instance, we have 2 guys. This is Bob. And Bob is in a 1-year relationship, right? He just started dating. Is that how to spell one? One. Okay, sorry. 1-year relationship. He just started dating a lady and he really likes her, right? So this is Bob. However, this is Dylan. And Dylan is in a 20-year marriage. My question to you is, who out of the 2 of them probably is very likely to understand his or her partner more, right? Between Bob and Dylan, who is likely to understand his partner more? The answer is probably Dylan. Why? Is this because every night Dylan brings out a questionnaire and begins to ask his wife, what do you love? What do you hate? What would you like to see? I mean, no. Maybe they have conversations around that from time to time, but that is not what really drives understanding. What drives understanding is the fact that Dylan and his wife have been living together for 20 years, meaning he has gotten to communicate with her and live with her for so long that he has noticed things. He has noticed things that maybe she doesn't even know, or that no other person apart from the two of them know. Meaning, he has been in situations where he has seen how she has reacted, how she has not reacted, how she acts when she's under pressure, how she acts when she's free. All of those, he has noticed it because of the length of their relationship, right? And how deep of a relationship they have together. Which brings me back to your email list. This is what I call covert research. Covert research is when you understand your lists without outrightly asking them what it is they want, or without doing any outward research. Meaning, the longer you communicate to your lists, based on the responses they give you, the lack of responses they give you, the products they buy, when they buy, how they buy, the kind of reviews you get to understand your lists covertly, right? You begin to understand your lists covertly, and that is what I call covert research. And the advantage of covert research is whatever it is you uncover is going to be unique to your lists. Remember, we are talking about scaling your email marketing revenue to 7 figures over a year, or 6 figures per month. And for you to do that, your email list is a priority. And whatever you understand from your email list is going to inform your decision on products to make, how to sell, how to position, all of that. So covert research allows you to uncover research that is unique to your list. And this is why you need to communicate with them and build a relationship with them, so that you begin to understand, what does your list like? What don't they like? How do they like to be communicated to? And that is going to be unique. It's not going to apply to any other person, right? So that is the next thing, right? So understanding your own list. But again, after understanding your lists, what's the next most important thing to build a relationship? Bring it back to real life. After going on dates and trying to understand them, let's say you now get into a more serious relationship. What is going to build that relationship? It is communication. Communication is what builds relationships. But more importantly, is what constant communication, right? Which brings me to the point of how many times should you email your lists. Let's bring it all the way back to a relationship in real life. If you are in a marriage, right? Let's assume it's a healthy marriage. Assume it's a healthy marriage. How often would you want your spouse to speak to you? Would you want it to be monthly? Would you want it to be bi-weekly? Would you want it to be weekly? Or would you prefer that you have a daily communication with your partner? Again, it may vary, right? But for most people in a healthy relationship, you want it to be daily, or as close to daily as possible. And this brings me to your email lists. You need to have daily communication with your lists. I know, again, this goes against what everybody has been taught about email marketing, but that's why I said in the beginning that if you have the mindset wrong, everything falls. If you have the mindset that you are here to build a relationship with your lists, and the same way you will try and build a relationship with a partner in real life is the same way you will try and build a relationship with your lists, then everything makes sense. You need daily communication, or at least as close to daily as possible, right? So that is the frequency that you need to go. However, when I tell people this, I get two big excuses. The first excuse is spam. Won't my list think that I am spamming them? And the second excuse is I don't have time, right? So now let me answer your questions. Let's talk about spam. The problem, right, with sending emails every day is not that your prospects will think that you are spamming them, right? It is a thing of what they expect. So let me give you an example. I grew up in a typical Nigerian household. And let's say you grew up in an African household, or maybe even an Asian household. You would know that public display of affection is not something that is very, very encouraged. It's not something that's very welcome. So it's very, very possible to live in your parents' house growing up and you've never seen them being close together in any way, right? Because it's just not part of the culture. Now, about 5 years ago, I traveled to the US, And then in the airports, there was a restaurant there, and at the corner of the airport, I saw a couple that were kissing. And you can you can imagine my shock, right? When I saw it, I was like, what in the world is going on? But every other person around me was perfectly fine. Everybody was comfortable. I was the one in shock. Now, why was I in shock? Was it because what they were doing was wrong? Maybe, maybe not. But why I was in shock is my expectation, what I find as normal, is based on my expectation of what should be normal. Meaning, how I feel is based on what I expect. So if I'm expecting that you shouldn't do this in public, when I see that you are doing it, then I'm shocked. It's the same thing with your email list. Normal to your list is based on their expectation. If they expect to hear from you once a week, that is when they will be shocked that you're sending them emails every day, because that is not normal for you. However, if it is normal, right, if they expect to hear from you every day, then it will be normal. Does it make sense? Are you getting me? Right? Meaning, what you need to do now is not to be afraid of sending emails every day, but it is to set the right expectations with your list. And how do you do that? It's quite simple. When they join your list, tell them exactly how many times they're going to be hearing from you, right? So you can tell them, I'm going to send you emails every day. I'm going to send you emails 5 times a week. Let them have that expectation. And when they join the list, in the very first email they get, set the expectation again so that they can have the right expectation and it will be normal for them, right? So that is expectation and being normal. So that already cancels the arguments of spam. The second argument that I normally get is that I don't have enough time. Time. And I understand you're a business owner. Your time is precious. But stay with me. Let's assume there's a glitch in the matrix we call life. And you found this infinite glitch that has no repercussion, right? And what is this glitch? If you wake up and you sit on your bed, right? So let's assume this is your bed. You sit on your bed first thing in the morning without doing anything. You don't press your phone. You don't do anything. You don't sleep back. You're awake, right? And you do it for 30 minutes. At the end of that 30 minutes, $10,000 is going to be deposited in your bank account. Guaranteed. It doesn't matter. Any day you wake up, sit up, don't sleep back. The first thing, don't press your device, stay up for 30 minutes, and $10,000 is going to be guaranteed in your bank account. Let me ask you a question. If that is true, how many days in a row are you going to be doing this? How often, how consistent would you be? Let's assume one day your work starts by 9 and you wake up by 8:50. And as you wake up, you're about to rush. Now you remember, my job pays me $5,000 per month. But if I sit on my bed, I would earn $10,000. What do? You will sit down and you'll go late to work, right? The problem is not time. The problem is that the reward that you are getting for the use of your time is not worth it. It's not worth the efforts that you are putting into it. That is the only problem. The problem is that the reward you are getting is not worth the effort. If you knew that every single time you send an email, $10,000 would appear in your bank account, would you send an email every day? Of course you will. The problem is not about the time. The problem is that you've not gotten a system that makes email marketing work for you. And that is why you are saying you don't have the time. So I hope I've been able to convince you that sending an email every day is absolutely necessary, right? Because you have the time. I know you do. Both of us know you do. And secondly, it is not going to be spam if you set the right expectation. So we've established that you need to be sending emails every day. However, there is a big problem with that. The problem is by sending emails every day, you risk boring people. Right? So when people hear from you every day, they can get tired of you, they can get bored. But there's only one solution to that, and that is to write interesting emails. To write interesting emails. That's the only solution. The question now is, how do we actually do that? And to show you my system, I'll explain the 4 email archetypes. So there are 4 archetypes when it comes to sending emails, right? And almost everybody falls into one or more of this. The first archetype is the teacher, meaning you are constantly trying to give value. You're trying to teach. You're trying to help people learn something. It is good. It is fine. It's not the best for making sales, but it's an archetype when it comes to sending email. The second archetype is the stylists. This is mostly e-commerce brands, but not always, that want to design their emails so perfectly that it looks almost like a flyer or a magazine that is so beautifully made, right? That is the stylist. Again, that is an archetype. That's an approach. And it is not bad. The problem, however, it is way too much effort for a result that is not commensurate, in my opinion. Meaning, if you strip out all the design and you send the text like that, you probably have very, very similar results. So the effort is not worth the result, in my opinion. The next archetype you have is the salesman. Now, the salesman is the person who constantly sends you pitches. Every day, you get a new 24 hours discount. This expires today. This is going out in stock. All of that. They constantly barrage you with what? Pitches. Again, it is a method, it's an archetype, and it does work. It does work. However, it is very, very, very short-term oriented, meaning it may work for a month or 2 months or 3 months, but eventually you are going to burn out people on your list because there's nothing valuable for them. Which brings us to the last archetype, which is what? The personality. This is the person who sends you personality-based emails, meaning emails that are valuable, not value-based, but are valuable and also sell, but are heavily based on the personality of the person sending it. So usually you'll be hearing stories about them, about their personal life, experiences they've had, work they've done with clients, stuff like that, but in a very friendly communication means, right? It almost feels like you are getting an email from your friend and not really getting email from a company. This is the personality-based approach. And this is what my system is heavily based on. Writing emails that feel personal, feel like they are coming from a friend to you, but are still selling you on something you already want. Right? That's the personality-based approach. So if you want to send emails every day, but you don't want to risk boring your lists, then you need to employ the personality-based approach. The question now is, how do you write personality-based emails? There's a 5-part system to every personality-based email, right? The first is your subject line. The second is your intro. The third is your story. The fourth is your lesson. And the last is your offer. This is the basic structure of every personality-based email. What that means is when you get an email and you want to make it, or when you want to send an email and you want to make it feel like it is coming from a friend, you need to have a subject line that does what? That induces curiosity, makes people want to open. You need to have an intro that gives them context to what they're about to read. You need to have a story. This can be a story about your life, about somebody else, whatever. You need to have a lesson that is important. Now, this is where the valuable part comes in. You are giving them a lesson that helps them, but you are not teaching them your whole system. That's not how it works. You're giving them a nugget, a tidbit that helps them, and then you're bridging into the offer. This is the structure of a personality-based email. Now, let's look at some examples. So, on your screen, you would already see the example I'm about to show you. And this is a personality-based email from Kim Krause. Now, if you don't know who she is, she's a really, really great copywriter. She has done a lot of work in like the wellness space and all of that. And this email is from her. And essentially, you can see the first part, the subject line, what I told Ramit and what I'm about to tell you. Now, if you don't know who Ramit is, he's a financial guy and he does a lot of like personal finance, stuff like that. So basically, the email goes into a story that she saw. So the beginning, you see a while back, I read a post on LinkedIn that apparently had been making the rounds and racking up hundreds of views and comments. What is that? Intro. That is the context you need to understand the email. That's the intro. She saw a LinkedIn post that has been getting a lot of comments. Then she went into the story of what the LinkedIn post is. I'm not going to read everything, but essentially, it was a freelancer who was facing eviction because he could not pay $15,000. He was looking for work, and people were asking him to set up a GoFundMe, all of that. That's the story. Then she now went into another story about how when she met Ramit earlier in her career, they spoke about how she and her husband put aside money into their savings and retirement fund in order to protect them from days where there's not enough income. Again, this is a story. She now moves from there into saying there's a way to have that effect in your business. Here's the point where she's bridging from the story to the lesson. There's a way to have that protection in your business, same way you have in your personal life, where you put money into savings, stuff like that, to protect you. You can also do it in your business with an email list. That's what she was saying. That if you have an email list and you build your list up properly, you can always send promotions to your list when things are down in business so that you don't risk being in a situation that the freelancer was in where he desperately needed work to pay rent. That is what story bridging into lesson. The lesson now is what? Build an email list to protect your business. That's the lesson. Then from the lesson, she now went into the offer. Here she was selling a product as an affiliate that helps you grow your email list and send emails that make you money. And that was the offer. So you can see this basic structure in this email that Kim Krause sends. Now let's take another look at an email from Chris Williamson. Now his own email, he doesn't follow the structure exactly, but it still works. So now let's read. My first 2 shows of tour in NYSC and Toronto were amazing. Thank you so much to everyone who came out. That's what? Your intro. Now that's not a very, very good intro because it doesn't bridge. It has nothing to do with the actual story, but it's still an intro. But now let's go into the story. You can see, in 1830, Victor Hugo was catastrophically behind the deadline on The Hunchback of Notre Dame. His publisher gave him only a few months left, but Hugo was a spectacular procrastinator, entertaining visitors, wandering Paris, and finding excuses not to write. So he's telling the story of Victor Hugo, and basically, Victor Hugo needed to finish the book he was working on. But Victor likes to procrastinate. That's something you and I can relate to. That's something his list can relate to. And what this is, the story. He likes to procrastinate. Now the story went on to say, how did Victor actually complete this book? He did it by locking himself in a room, and he didn't leave the room. He only wore one clothes, so he could not go out without clothes. And he didn't leave the room until he had completed the book. That is the story. But then he's now bridging it into the offer. And as you'll see, the results, in a feverish burst, he wrote day after day, often for 12 hours straight, and finished the entire novel within the locked down months. That's the end of the story, and we are bridging into the lesson. By January 15th, 1831, the manuscript was complete, a frantic burst that birthed one of the great novels of the century. Without that desperate, almost theatrical punishment system, the book that cemented Hugo's legacy might never have been completed. Again, story plus lesson. You can sort of like get the lesson already. If you want to complete something, you need to give yourself like a hard deadline. Do something that would almost force you to achieve that goal. Then he now gives a one-line statement. You'll be amazed at what you can do when you have no other option. That is the lesson. That's the lesson in that story. So you can see the whole flow from subject line to the intro to the story to the lesson. Now, he didn't have an offer. I mean, he did have an offer, but he didn't follow it in this structure. His offer was way down, and he had some other things. But that doesn't matter. This is the basic structure of a personality-based email. And this is the kind of email you want to send. However, this is all about the emails you write on a day-to-day basis. There are still other ways to make money from your lists. And particularly, you can make money with what is called automated flows. automated flows. Now, what are automated flows? These are emails or email sequences that you write once and you set it. It gets triggered based on an action a user takes, and then they get that email. So for instance, if somebody joins your list for the first time, they can get something called a welcome flow, where there's a series of emails that are designed for all first-time prospects on your list. So that is basically an example of an automated flow. A set of emails or a series of emails that are triggered based on the customer's action, right? And these are things that you just write once, you set it, and it continues to make money for you over time. Now let's get into 3 types of automated flows that I believe every business should have that most businesses don't have, right? The first and the easiest is your welcome flow. So like I've explained, this is the flow where you get emails to every new subscriber that joins your list. So once they join, they get a series of emails that tells them what it is you do, the unique value you offer, why they should remain on your list, that kind of stuff. So let's look at an example. This example is from Monk Park. And as I'm going to be showing you examples, just understand that all the examples are going to lean heavily on our 4 archetypes. Remember our archetypes. You have the teacher, the stylist, the personality, and the salesman. All of these emails are going to lean heavily into one or more of those, but it doesn't matter. I'm just using them as examples. Your own emails need to be personality-based for the most part. So this email is from Monk Park, and this is their welcome series. So you can see our story. If you are reading this, you've probably had trouble finding snacks that are portable, nutritious, and actually taste good. For years, we did. So what are they doing there? They are establishing why you should be on their list, the problem they are trying to solve, and all of that. Now they introduce themselves. We are Michelle and Tobias, co-founders of Monk Park. Again, welcome flow. You're letting your list know who you are. And they go on and on and on about how they are creating awesome traits and all of that. That's the welcome flow. The second flow is the cart abandonment flow, right? You probably have heard of this. This is the kind of flow that goes out when a customer adds something to their cart but doesn't check out, meaning they're interested, but something came up and then they didn't complete the purchase. So here's an example. This example is from Whiskey Loots, which is like a whiskey bottle subscription. And so still thinking about it, if you can't decide, here are some things we think you could do with your Whiskey Loots box. Again, they're reminding you that you have something in your cart, here are some things you can do with your box. Then they now have some options. Try new whiskeys every month, drink them while winning at poker, drink really, really slowly. They're trying to be funny and witty, but ultimately the idea is you want to have a flow that is triggered when people add things to their shopping carts and forget to check out. Now, the next flow you need to have that not enough businesses have is what I call the customer anniversary flow. I hope you can see my handwriting. The customer anniversary flow. And this is a flow that is triggered based on when someone becomes a customer with your business. So for instance, if I buy a product from you today, you want to trigger a flow that in 3 months' time, you have a 3 months customer anniversary. In 6 months' time, you have a 6 months customer anniversary. In a year's time, you have a 1 year customer anniversary flow that is triggered automatically to all your customers based on the first time they purchased from your business. This is just one way to add that goodwill, to add that intention that we know when you started purchasing from us. We love you, we appreciate you. Here's a little discount or a little gift for you to purchase again, right? For no reason other than you're a customer before and this is an anniversary we're celebrating for you. Now, these are the 3 types of flows I believe every business should have. And if you've implemented these flows, you can now relax and let your emails do the work for you behind the scenes, because all of this work behind the scenes. This brings me to one of the most important things that is always talked about with email, and that is metrics. Metrics, let me erase. One of the most important things that is talked about is metrics. So people love tracking metrics. People want to track open rates, they want to track close rates, they want to track slip rates, they want to track every single rates, buying rates, they want to track CTR, ABC, HIV. Everybody wants to track everything. However, I don't think most of those are necessary. Now, let's take an example that you probably understand. In Nigeria, we call it football, but wherever you are, you might call it soccer. In a soccer match, in a football match, there are metrics, there are statistics that are being tracked. And you can track things like ball accuracy or pass accuracy. How accurate was the pass? You can track things like possession. Which team had the ball for the longest? You can track things like shots on targets. How many shots were on target? Was it like it almost entered? Right? You could track all of those things. But no matter what you track, there's only one metric that is important. And that is goals. How many goals did you score? If you track all these things and all of this line up and you don't score goals, it doesn't matter. There's only one metric that is important, and that's goals. Every other thing works to serve this. Bringing this into your email marketing, there's only one metric that matters, and that is sales. Nothing else matters. That's why I'm not a big fan of tracking open rates, click rates, all of those. It's not like they are not useful. They are useful. But the most important thing is sales. And many times they don't align. You can have a higher open rate and a lower sales, and lower open rate and higher sales because of how you approach the email. You can do things that will lead to higher opens, right? Just because you want to show that you have 50% open rates, but would ultimately lead to lower sales in the short term and the long term. Most people say you need to have 50% open rates, and it's just a number they pulled out of their ass. It means nothing. There's no basis for that, right? It doesn't matter. I would rather have 10% open rates and have like $1,000 in sales than have 50% open rates and have $50 in sales. Like, what matters is how much you are selling. That is the only metric that matters. All the other metrics, whether open, whether clicks, all of that serve to help you make more sales. And when you are approaching it, you need to think of it from that perspective. Don't do things purely for the sake of open rates. That's why people do like silly things like putting RE in the subject line. That doesn't make any sense. It's trickery. It's cheap trickery. And doing stuff like that builds what? Distrust, which ultimately leads to what? Lower sales in the long term. So yes, you can have higher open rates, but lower sales if you approach it wrong. This brings me to the end of my 6-figure per month email marketing scaling system. And if you are here up until now, it means you've definitely learned how you can grow your email marketing revenue to 100K per month, 500K per month, and even beyond using my simple system. But what I didn't do in this video was I didn't show you in depth of actually writing the emails. I gave you the simple framework, but because of time, I couldn't take you step by step and give you categories of emails you could write. So if you want to learn more about actually writing emails that people love to read and buy from, then check out this video.